The U.S. government spends in excess of $20 billion a year conducting experiments on animals. The White Coat Waste Project found in 2021 that the NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a component of NIH at the time, ran by Dr. Fauci, spent $1.68 million force-feeding toxic drugs to beagle puppies between 6 and 8 months old before dissecting and killing them. The conversation we're having today is important. In 2022, due to public criticism lobbied against Fauci's NIAID by me and other members of Congress, another $1.8 million experiment to abuse beagle puppies in various drug tests was canceled. So I want to thank the work.
Guys, that is just the tip of the iceberg on this. I'm going to let you guys know this is going to be a rough one. I never do like viewer advisories or, what is it, trigger warnings or any of that stuff. But as an animal lover, I'm here to tell you there's no like graphic images.
No.
Right. But the descriptions can enrage people. So just keep that in mind, and your heart's going to break for the animals. But this is necessary because this is the kind of stuff that our government is spending your money on, guys. So we're just gonna cruise right into it. This is the
House Oversight
Committee. Is this Forbes or
no? This is the actual House Oversight Committee YouTube page.
Okay. The House Oversight Committee YouTube page. The name of the clip is Transgender Lab Rats and Poisoned Puppies, Oversight of Taxpayer-Funded Animal Cruelty. And as you can hear, my voice says a lot about what this is going to have in it. All right, so we're just gonna jump into it. We're going to start off with Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina.
And she's the chair.
And she's the chair of this committee.
Yep.
And she a bad girl, man. Like I like me some Nancy Mace, dude. She's awesome.
She doesn't put up with crap.
Yeah, she does not put up with crap. So we're going to take this 2201 to 2746. That's her intro, etc. So here we go.
Objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Good afternoon. Late last year, the White Coat Waste Project exposed more than $10 million in taxpayer funds that were spent creating transgender mice, rats, and monkeys.
What?
These DEI grants funded painful and deadly transgender experiments that forced lab animals to undergo invasive surgeries and hormone therapies at universities across the country. For example, the Biden-Harris administration spent $2.5 million taxpayer dollars to study the fertility of transgender mice.
Let that sink in for just a minute, because I don't know about you, but I'm used to the House Republicans overselling stuff sometimes as to how bad things are, or like they'll put transgender stuff in front of. No, this is actually, they were actually experimenting on animals and doing invasive surgeries on them to change their gender and then do more experiments to see what happens. And it millions of dollars of your money, dude. This is messed up stuff.
Yeah. Like we talked about before the show, who does this?
Who thinks this is okay? Like, I genuinely can't imagine anyone other than evil individuals doing something like this.
Let that sink in. We spent over $2 million studying the fertility of transgender mice. $1.1 million was spent to find out if female rats receiving testosterone therapies to mimic transgender men were more likely to overdose on a party drug, commonly used in the LGBTQ community to induce drug-fueled what's called, quote, chemsex. I asked my staff what.
Okay. Moving right along. I just had to take a breath.
what was chemsex and the chemical, and I guess it's something called GHB, which is a date rape drug, and also a drug that's used recreationally. So we spent over $1 million to find out if female rats receiving testosterone therapy were more likely to overdose on a date rape drug.
What?
Like, that's what your taxpayer dollars were being spent on.
Bruh.
Federal funds were also used to forcibly transition male monkeys to see if hormone therapy made them more susceptible to HIV. Now, I didn't know this until recently, but monkeys cannot be infected with HIV. Yet this federal
Wait, hold on. I thought they told us that's where it came from.
That's what I thought. Too.
I distinctly remember that shit, dude. Because like I said, I was around in the 80s. My mom had a friend, a really, like, her best friend in the world was gay, like flamboyantly gay, right? And he had a friend who got HIV. And so they had to give me a crash course. I was young on like what it is, because they talk about it, Everything we were told about it was that it started because of an interaction between monkeys and people.
That's what I thought.
So now we're learning that they can't even be infected with it.
That's what they say. Yeah. Yeah.
funded experiment forced them to take hormone-altering drugs to study a virus they cannot have. The Biden-Harris administration was so eager to propagate their radical gender ideology across all facets of American society that they were surgically mutating animal genitals. Like, taxpayer money went to that. So my question is, were they castrating mice, castrating monkeys? Were they getting double mastectomies? The language that they used in many of these experiments were, quote, gender affirming care, which I learned about 3 years ago what that meant. I thought that was maybe just some hormones or something something like that. But apparently gender affirming care is actually surgical mutilation of genitals. And apparently it's not just humans they're doing it to. We were doing it with taxpayer dollars to animals. It's well known that because of the differences between animal and human biology, animal testing frequently does not produce results relevant for humans. In fact, 90% of novel drugs that are successful in animal tests fail in human clinical trials.
90%, dude?
Yeah, that's what I was telling you earlier.
You know, I'll tell you, I used to be a big advocate for animal testing because I believed what we were told, that this was necessary, that we learn a lot by testing on animals. But, mice are very similar to humans, and had I known that 90% of this is useless, 90% of the animal suffering in the name of science is fucking pointless, I'd have been joining some of these crazies that I thought protesting these labs, dude. Like, what? What?
Today's scientific questions are so complex that we have well surpassed a time where it is useful or appropriate to rely on inhumane animal experiments to answer them. Recently developed technological tools can more accurately model human biology and identify solutions that are more useful for human patients. But it is often the federal bureaucracy that prevents these new technologies from being used.
True.
Instead of adequately investing in these innovative alternatives, the federal government has continued to funnel taxpayer dollars towards cruel animal experiments. Today, most of the 27 NIH institutes and centers conduct or support animal testing, as does the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Defense, and countless other agencies. We have some beagle puppies here with us today. Beagle puppies have gone through some of the worst medical experiments. I mean, drugging them with cocaine, having insects eat at them and their bodies so much until they die, drugging them until they die. These are God's creatures and they're beautiful, and you can see them sitting in the front row today. So we thank the folks who are here and brought these beautiful beagle puppies here today.
Oh, look at the cute. My first pet was a beagle.
Okay.
Yeah, his name was Drooper. Drooper. And the name came from a stuffed beagle that I was given when I was in the hospital when I was a little kid. My grandfather gave me a stuffed, animal. to make me feel better. And on the tag, his name was Drooper. So when I got out, my grandfather gave me a real puppy, and I named him Drooper.
Okay.
So I have an intimate relationship with beagles, man. I'm about to get mad. I
Yeah.
already know. I've seen a little bit. I'm about to get mad. Sorry.
In fact, the U.S. government spends in excess of $20 billion a year conducting experiments on animals. The White Coat Waste
billion?
Project found in 2021 that the NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a component of NIH at the time, ran by Dr. Fauci, spent $1.68 million force-feeding toxic drugs to beagle puppies between 6 and 8 months old before dissecting and killing them.
Bruh.
The conversation we're having today is important. In 2022, due to public criticism lobbied against Fauci's NIAID by me and other members of Congress, another $1.8 million experiment to abuse beagle puppies in various drug tests was canceled. So I want to thank the work of White Coat Waste and everyone in the room today, others who've been on the forefront of this fight to end this sick and cruel and barbaric testing of animals today. Thanks to one of our witnesses, Justin Goodman of White Coat Waste. We have in the audience, I already know the beagles are here. The beagles are a reminder of the real cost of animal experimentation. So I'm looking forward to this conversation this afternoon regarding wasteful government spending on animal cruelty. And I also want to say, before I yield over to the ranking member for her opening statement, that this is a nonpartisan issue.
Yes.
Ironically, in oversight, while we might fight a lot in public, we are actually very nonpartisan here, and some of the most nonpartisan work in Congress comes right through this committee. So I want to thank the ranking member, look forward to working with you, and I yield to you for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to jump right into her.
Yep.
But one thing that I do want to say is, look, we're going to learn some very disturbing things. Those of you, especially those of you who haven't seen this before, it's going to be pretty damn shocking. Just be prepared. Take a break if you need to, because this is rough. That said, there's no reason in hell our taxpayer money should be spent on this shit, dude. None whatsoever. Like none. All right. This is Representative Brown from Ohio, the ranking member.
Yep.
And we're going to take that 2747 right here to 2916. Here we go.
You and good afternoon to our three witnesses. Thanks for being here. Chairwoman Mace, I appreciated working with you last week to introduce a bipartisan bill to strengthen federal contractor cybersecurity. I was glad our teams were able to connect early into this new Congress. And on a personal note, my team found your staff to be very responsive and helpful.
Likewise.
As the ranking member of this subcommittee, I look forward to continuing to work with you to modernize and secure federal IT systems from potential cyber attacks. Bipartisan solutions like this are critical to protecting our federal system from cyber threats. I look forward to finding more common ground and delivering results for the American people. I'm looking forward to having a productive discussion today about the scientific innovations and the need for additional oversight of alternatives to animal testing. Each year, millions of animals, including dogs, cats, and monkeys, are used worldwide for research, and I think it's safe to assume that everyone here in this room would like to see that number reduced.
Yeah.
We are living in a moment where there have been extraordinary advancements in medical research, utilizing groundbreaking technology like artificial intelligence, 3D bioprinting, and robotics that allows us to reduce our reliance on animal testing. I'm especially proud that much of this innovation is happening in my district, Ohio's 11th, home to world-class research universities and medical institutions. Not only does this offer the chance to save animals from suffering, these methods can actually lead to better and more accurate results. From a scientific perspective, one of the main issues with animal testing is that these trials often fail to produce results relevant to humans.
Yeah. And that's really the crux of it is we're paying for all this, and the vast majority of this stuff doesn't even matter. It doesn't produce any appreciable results whatsoever. Our next, we're going to jump ahead to 3145. And we're going to do the introduction, swearing in of witnesses. We're going to learn who's here to testify basically in front of Congress.
Yep.
And they'll tell their jobs. Here we go.
Thank you.
Great job. I'm pleased to introduce our witnesses for today's hearing. Our first witness is Mr. Justin Goodman, Senior Vice President, Advocacy and Public Policy at the White Coat Waste Project. It's also Mr. Goodman's birthday today, and so I'd like to wish you a happy birthday and thank you for being here today. Our second witness is Dr. Paul Locke, Professor of the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Our third witness is Ms. Elizabeth Baker, Director of Research Policy at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Welcome, everyone. We're pleased to have you this afternoon. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses, if you'll please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. We appreciate you for being here today and look forward to your testimony. You may be seated. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on when you speak and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. And when the red light comes on, your 5 minutes is up.
So I just want to say it's really easy to like watch these and see somebody who didn't turn their mic on and be like, oh, you moron. Remember, though, and I have a hard time remembering too, it's different when you're actually there and you got all these cameras on you and these lights and these people and all of that. And sometimes it's really easy to forget to turn the mic back on. We're going to go right into the first witness, which is Justin Goodman. That's the White Coat Waste Project. Yep. Is that what it's called? White Coat Waste. They are, my understanding, an organization that looks into animal testing and the necessity of it, and whether it like does what it's supposed to do, basically, right? Or is that, all right.
And we would ask that
I'm
you
sure
please wrap it up. I would like to recognize Mr. Goodman to please begin your opening statement.
Oh, like the beagles. Look at the puppies.
Thank you. Chairwoman Mace, Ranking Member Brown, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As the chairwoman mentioned, it's my birthday, and this is the greatest gift I could possibly ask for. My name is Justin Goodman, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Public Policy at the nonprofit, nonpartisan government watchdog White Coat Waste Project. White Coat Waste has one mission: to stop taxpayers from being forced to pay for cruel, wasteful, inefficient, and dangerous animal experiments in labs around the world.
Okay.
Lab survivors Nellie, Beasley, and Oliver sitting behind me are 3 of the many reasons why.
Oh, they're actually
Many
from the
people
lab?
don't realize that the U.S. government.
Oh, I thought they were just beagles representative.
they
Those
were-
are the actual dogs?
That was saved,
Oh.
Government is not only the single largest funder of animal testing in the country, but in the world. Uncle Sam outspends the private sector on animal testing 2 to 1. This isn't something to be proud of.
What?
Over 20 years ago, the NIH budget doubled and animal testing skyrocketed. But overall, people aren't healthier or living longer.
Right?
It is estimated that over $20 billion a year of taxpayers' money is still wasted annually on ineffective and inhumane tests on tens of millions of puppies, kittens, and other animals.
$20 billion a year we spend on animal testing through the various agencies of our government. That's nuts, dude.
Am I being flippant when I use the word waste? Absolutely not. The NIH itself has said, quote, animal models fail to mimic disease or predict how drugs will work in humans, resulting in much wasted time and money, end quote. Yet agencies continue to dump billions of tax dollars into animal tests despite the horrible return on investment. Experiments we've uncovered range from the savage to the stupid: injecting puppies with cocaine, staging hamster fight clubs, putting dead turtles on treadmills. One of the reasons this
putting
yes.
dead turtles on why the
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Why would you?
problem has gotten
I don't
so
get
out of
it.
control is a stunning lack of innovation, transparency, and accountability.
Oh my God, dude.
Agencies do not report or even track in some cases
gets
how
worse.
much money is being spent, how many animals are used, what's being done to them, where, and what taxpayers are getting out of it. We file hundreds of FOIA requests every year to glean just basic information. When we can find out how tax dollars are being spent, it becomes apparent why federal agencies fight against disclosing details. For example, Senator Rand Paul's December 2024 Festivus report highlighted cruel taxpayer-funded cat experiments exposed by my organization. In one $10 million DARPA grant, cats have marbles shoved up their rectums and are electroshocked to make them defecate in constipation experiments.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna replay that. Wow.
Yeah.
What possible like scientific result could that
We've also recently
I don't
identified
know.
over $240 million in NIH grants for transgender animal experiments, including $26 million in active funding. Some of these tests, as the chairwoman mentioned, examine the effects of party drugs on animals injected with testosterone and how hormones used for human gender transitions impact the size and shape of animals' genitals. How does this translate to helping the average American?
Right.
Shockingly, 95% of this funding came from Dr. Fauci's NIAID.
imagine
Speaking
that.
of Dr. Fauci,
Imagine
our group
that.
is perhaps best known for exposing his and USAID's funding for dangerous gain-of-function animal experiments at the Wuhan lab. We also uncovered his support for cruel beagle tests around the world.
So this group right here was responsible for us knowing about the sick shit that Fauci was up to at NIH and
he was
NAID.
just you might have missed it, but he said it's not just happening in the U.S. It happens around the world. These
Dude,
experiments.
This is disgusting. It's like this is evil. It just is. It's evil.
Taxpayer-funded animal tests may have caused COVID. Unfortunately, the government hasn't learned its lesson from what happened in Wuhan. Today, there are still 26 animal labs in China, including labs controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and tied to the military, approved to receive NIH funding. This isn't just a misuse of taxpayer dollars, but presents a national security threat.
Yeah.
As of today, we are still sending money to basically labs in China. Dude, like you can't make this up.
No,
you can. Here's the crazy part is if you saw this kind of crap on like primetime TV, you'd be like, that's horrible writing. Like, there's no way that could happen in real life. What?
White Coat Waste recently obtained a contract funded by the NIH and DOD that's paying for 300 beagles a week to be restrained and injected with or force-fed experimental drugs in a Chinese lab. The reason they chose beagles like Nellie, Oliver, and Beasley, the contract states, and I quote, "Beagle dogs are docile, cute, and easy to domesticate, so it has been the best choice," end quote.
So sad.
Yeah, they're innocent and they trust you. So by all means, abuse that trust. You know, like pedophiles do.
Yeah.
Dude.
Not because it's effective, but because it's easy.
Yeah.
This issue extends beyond China. 344 animal labs in 52 foreign countries are approved currently to receive NIH funding. GAO audits prompted by White Coat Waste have found that NIH shipped billions to foreign animal labs with essentially no oversight, that the NIH has never visited a foreign animal lab in over 40 years of overseeing research, and that some foreign spending isn't even tracked. This is how some spending in Wuhan went undisclosed. And no surprise, Dr. Fauci's division of NIH is responsible for 95% of the foreign aid. Continuing to send tax dollars to an authoritarian adversary's animal labs is a recipe for disaster. With Chairwoman Mace's leadership, we've been able to halt plans for wasteful and cruel testing on dogs and cats and other Fauci-funded labs. These tests have never should have been approved in the first place and were only deemed unnecessary after we exposed them. Our campaigns and legislative work with the chairwoman, Reps Boebert, Kano, Luna, and many others exposed and shuttered waste like the government's largest cat lab that was feeding kittens kitten meat from Chinese wet markets. Yes, that.
I can see I might have a hard time keeping my temper in check during this. I can already, bruh. Woo! What? Who comes up with this shit?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Who designs these like experiments? Like, oh my.
That's true. That was a cannibalism experiment, eliminating VA testing on dogs and cats and ending nicotine tests on monkeys at the FDA. But there's much more work to be done. Taxpayers shouldn't be forced to pay billions of dollars every year for outdated, cruel, and potentially dangerous animal experiments, especially when most people oppose them. We're excited to work with you, DOJ, the administration, and others to continue cutting wasteful spending on animal experiments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on my birthday. I look forward to your questions.
Now, this is the thing. This is just what I want to impart to the viewers before we move on. This is what people are screaming about to not stop the funding of. This is what the Democrats are screaming. Keep the spigot on. Life-saving programs, right? Life-saving programs. This is the kind of shit that DOJ is uncovering that we need to know about and stop. It's not the stuff that's actually legitimately helping people. We don't want to stop that. At least most of us don't. But oh my God, dude, like it's going to get worse, isn't it?
Just wait.
Okay. Anyway. Woo. All right. Normally I say grab a sandwich. Probably not good to eat during this.
Not during this.
All right. We're going to jump right into the next witness, which is Dr. Paul Locke. That's going to run till 41:32. Here we go.
Thank you. I recognize Dr. Locke to please begin your opening statement.
Chairwoman Mace, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the committee and subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to offer comments at today's hearing. My name is Paul Locke. I'm a professor in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm an attorney and an environmental health scientist, and a substantial portion of my work has concentrated on the uses of non-animal methodologies in research and regulatory decision-making, with an emphasis on the promise that these methods have for both reducing animal use and improving evidence-based decision-making. I want to state for the record that the opinions here that I offer are my own, and they do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Johns Hopkins University or the Johns Hopkins Health System. Today, I want to cover three major points. First, the scientific questions facing us increasingly call into question our reliance on animal models and demand that we move forward with more human-centric science. Second, federal agencies must play a leadership role in this transition to these new human-centric models. And third, the development and deployment of these models represent innovation and places where U.S. businesses and scientists are and must continue to be at the cutting edge. Let's start with a discussion about scientific methods and needs. The complex scientific challenges that we now face require that we move away from traditional animal models and embrace new technologies that do not involve animals, but instead incorporate human biology. These technologies include small engineered systems such as organs on a chip and microphysiological systems, or three-dimensional groups of cells such as organoids that mimic many of the important functions of human organs. I would also include AI in this group. Now, while there's considerable enthusiasm around the promise of these new methodologies, unless federal agencies and departments support their development and recognize their promise, they will never be able to reach their full potential. We're not going to be able to replace animals in biomedical research with the meager investments that federal agencies are now making. EPA, FDA, and NIH all have important roles to play in unlocking the potential that these technologies have for designing better drugs, protecting the environment, and improving health. Based on our research, there are currently major gaps in the frameworks needed to support new methodologies, and it's imperative that the federal government step forward. The federal approach has been passive and reactive. What we need is for federal agencies and departments to lead efforts to development, implement, and use these methods. And my written testimony goes into greater information about what federal agencies can be doing, and I hope we'll have some questions on that as well. Finally, the U.S. must continue to lead the way in these technologies so that we are setting the global standards in these fields rather than following other nations.
He's right. I mean, he makes some excellent points. And I didn't I automatically thought of AI when they were talking about the advances that make the animal testing unnecessary or extraneous or whatever. But he mentioned a couple of things that I know nothing about. It sounds very, very like sci-fi, man, but it sounds cool. Here's the thing. There's enough out there now, I think, that even if animal testing worked, we can move away from it. So dude, I genuinely don't know what we're doing anymore in this country. We're going to jump to Elizabeth Baker, which is the next witness, and that starts at 43:17.
Your opening. Thank you, Dr. Locke. I now recognize Ms. Baker to please begin your opening statement.
Chair Mace and Ranking Member Brown and members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Elizabeth Baker at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I work with a team of scientists, physicians, lawyers, and other professionals to move medical research, product testing, and advanced medical training away from using animals. I appreciate the subcommittee's attention to this critical subject. Ending federally funded animal experiments is long overdue. For generations, tax dollars have paid scientists to conduct acts that would shock the conscience of most Americans. Dogs, cats, monkeys, rabbits, pigs, and other animals are used in experiments that are painful, stressful, and often lethal for the animals that are subjected to them. Increasingly, it is recognized across research and testing sectors that animals are not good surrogates for humans. Over 85% of Americans that were recently polled agreed that animal-based research should be phased out. Both Congress and the administration must take action to ensure that government funding and requests for animal experiments are stopped, and that instead a portion of that funding is reinvested into more effective human-based approaches.
I will say, now that we're at the end of the witnesses and I know who they are, I actually would have liked to have seen a witness who was pro animal test.
They probably couldn't get anybody.
That, you make a good point. Maybe they couldn't. Because I remember like especially like, I remember like the AIDS, right? Really the AIDS epidemic, because we started learning about how all this, I started learning about how all these drugs come to market, right?
Okay.
And the testing that they go through, and I'll make a show on that. But we were assured, we were insisted to that animal testing was absolutely critical for all these drugs.
I kind of heard that too in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't remember the 80s.
Right. But yeah, in the 90s, they told us, I remember they were running ads on TV about how necessary it was. You remember that?
I kind of remember.
Yeah.
That.
Okay. So the next clip, but the point is, look at what's become of us, man. Like, this is nuts. 48-20. And we're on to Representative Mace, and it's 48-20 to 53-28. Here we go.
Thank you all for being here today. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Goodman, in your written statement, you state the White Coat Waste Project identified at least $10 million in NIH grants for transgender animal experiments. You state that 95% of the funding came from Dr. Fauci's NIAID. Why is the federal government spending taxpayer dollars to create transgender animals?
Exactly. Why?
It's a great question.
Your microphone.
Thank you. It's a great question. I mean, I wonder why they're making cats constipated also. It's a question that rings around in my head at night. I'm going to bed, why we're funding these things. A lot of the programs that are funded do latch on to some type of social trend, and then animal experimenters use it as a money grab, as an excuse to get NIH tax funds from some,
that.
In this case, DEI grants were used to fund a lot of this stuff. So people who abuse animals find some kind of excuse to bring in new money, and they'll switch their research program over to something that's trendy to bring tax dollars into their university. I mean, that's part of the big problem here, is that colleges and universities are taking 25 to 40% off the top of every single one of these grants for indirect costs that go into a slush fund that has nothing to do with the research. So they're willing to let experimenters do whatever they want to animals to keep the money flowing in.
Some
all
people
about
might
the money.
describe that as money laundering.
Yeah.
All right. Are sex change experiments that forcibly transition mice, rats, and monkeys necessary for science?
Absolutely not.
Why do these experiments at all, if they aren't producing useful human relevant research, why again, you think it's a money issue? Follow the money?
Animal testing is big business.
As you know, I've been long vocal about animal experiments and federal funded animal testing, and worked with you to prevent Fauci's plan to waste almost $2 million in taxpayer dollars to maim and murder beagle puppies, for example. Why was Dr. Fauci so insistent on poisoning these puppies, even though, as you state in your written statement, the FDA does not mandate that human drugs be studied on dogs?
So much of the problem with all of this is institutional inertia. It's that people just continue doing the same thing because that's what they've done before. There was a report that came out, the National Academy of Sciences put out a few years ago about the VA's testing on dogs that Congressman Khanna actually helped us get the NAS to conduct. And they found that most of the VA's testing on dogs was unnecessary. And not only that it was unnecessary, but one of the reasons why is that there's this circular reasoning that they use to defend it when they propose a new project. They say, well, we used dogs previously, so we're just going to use dogs again. And there's no one to.
What is the VA testing on dogs? Do you know?
Say, is that? I wonder if he's talking about the Veteran Affairs.
That's
what I'm thinking.
That's what I think he's talking about.
Yeah.
What the hell is the VA testing on dogs? Are they doing like PTSD stuff, or?
That's what I'm wondering.
Like I don't know. That's why I'm asking. It's a like I can't think of anything that the VA would need to test dogs for, like health. They're supposed to be about providing care for our veteran, dude.
Break that cycle. There's not enough oversight to say, hey, maybe we don't need to do this anymore. Maybe there's a better way to do
right.
it. It's like, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and that's kind of the problem.
Right. And what would have happened to these beagle puppies if if your organization hadn't rescued them?
In the case of those experiments, those dogs were going to be force-fed and injected with massive doses of experimental drugs to poison them to see at what point they got sick or died.
Yeah, isn't that terrible? I don't know who does this kind of stuff.
How can you justify this?
And those tests will have no relevance.
Like I will say one thing. It's one thing. It's one thing to test like shampoo on an animal to see how the skin reacts. I get that, right? Non-fatal. It may be slightly uncomfortable. I get that. But the rest of this stuff
is just brutal.
This is just this is just torture. Taxpayer funded torture.
Unnecessary.
Relevance for the safety and efficacy of that drug in human beings.
Thank you. Dr. Locke, I have a few questions for you. Can the scientific challenges we face today be solved by relying on animal testing?
No, not all of them.
Can you briefly describe how new technologies can allow us to transition away from animal testing without hindering scientific research?
There we go.
Certainly. I also want to point out that in my written testimony, I do try to lay out a roadmap for how that could happen. But basically what we need to do is we need to spend a lot more resources supporting these non-animal technologies, such as organs on a chip and organoids, so we can use those to study many of the phenomena that we're now studying in animals.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Baker.
Organs on a chip. Like, that's just wild sounding, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I was thinking too when I was watching this earlier.
Like, is it like mini, like tiny? When you think of chip, I'm thinking like a computer chip
That's what I'm
size,
thinking.
or I don't know. I'd be interested to see.
Printing.
We kind of, what's that?
Probably 3D printing somehow. Goes to
Yeah,
the
maybe
chip.
that's what it is.
That's my guess.
Organelle, or no, it wasn't organoid. Organoids and organs on a chip. Maybe we'll have to look into that in a later episode and see what these things are, because it sounds cool. Like, I gotta lie. It does sound neat, doesn't it? Yeah.
Amazing.
What are your thoughts today, reading your testimony, for the opportunity to testify that it's long overdue? Where do we go from here? How do we fix the problem?
I think we fix the problem by investing in what is going right. We've got to cut a lot of this terrible animal research. We need to cut the National Primate Research Centers. We are funding these centers to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year. We've got to stop funding animal experiments outside the United States, as Mr. Goodman said, that have no oversight. We've got to stop. If you can meet your objectives without using animals, there's absolutely no reason that you should. And so
Right.
And
I
I was
agree
going to
with
say,
that.
thank you for bringing it up, the amount of money, the hundreds of millions. I recently found out in the state of South Carolina, in my district, there's a primate breeding center and testing site, Alpha Genesis. They've made, to my understanding, over $100 million from NIH over the last 20 or so years. This is a boondoggle. It is a racket. And hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, in fact, have been wasted on it. So I want to thank you all for your testimony today. Thank you for being here. I would now like to recognize my colleague, Ms. Brown, for 5 minutes.
Okay, we're going to jump right into her. It's disgusting as a taxpayer when you learn what your taxes are being used for. And I don't know about you guys, but I damn sure am not in favor of this. I don't know anyone who thinks this is okay.
It's not okay.
It's not. So we're going to go right into Representative Brown, and it's from this 5329 to 5824. So 5 minutes.
Again, thank you to our witnesses for being here. I think it's clear that we all agree that we do not want to see animals harmed and that there is work to be done to reduce our reliance on animals for medical and scientific research. So I'd like to start with you, Ms. Baker. Can you talk about where you think some of the current gaps in the oversight of animal are in the animal experimentation?
Yeah, I think we have some major issues with oversight. We don't know really how much spending is going to animal experiments. The public is largely in the dark. We try so hard to understand this information, and we have to come up with some of it on our own. It would be great if the federal government would be more transparent in this way. We do know that in 2016, the NIH said that for fiscal year 2015, 47% of extramural grants used mice. $7.4 billion is what that would be in 2024. In 2021, NIH issued a figure that said about 8% of grants go to non-clinical, non-animal approaches. Well, non-clinical approaches really mean the animal tests or some of these, or the alternatives. And so a ton of money is going into this. We wanted to understand for cancer. Cancer is one disease area where it is well known that animals are just really poor predictors of human outcomes. We get cancer differently. It behaves differently in our bodies. The failure rate for cancer drugs is 94%. We have cures for cancer in mice. We don't in humans. And so we wanted to look at what is the National Cancer Institute doing? How are they funding? What does their funding look like? And so our analysis is not perfect because it's based on, unfortunately, just the publicly available information, which is not totally transparent. But we found that 45% of their grants seem to be animal related. And so the NIH can really, I think, help by ensuring that there is transparency around this. There's also an oversight.
And I just want to point out that they've been doing this testing on animals for my whole life, at least as far as cancer is concerned. Do you guys know of any cures for cancer that that have resulted from this? If they exist, they're certainly not on the market. They're certainly not pushing it. I have to agree with her that 95% of this stuff is just not any good whatsoever.
Issue when it's going to reclaim, because I'd like to get to Dr. Locke too, but thank you. Dr. Locke, you talked in your testimony about several different technologies that you've worked with that are direct alternatives to animal testing. Can you speak to the success of these technologies and what Congress can do to be more supportive of the efforts to expand other innovative technologies in this space?
Yes, thank you for your question. I think there are at least two things that Congress can do. The first thing Congress can do is to really get a handle, as my colleagues have said, on how much money we're spending on these technologies. The transparency issue is severe. So since this is a committee on accountability, I would say the first thing we need to do is we need to count. We don't have that information. You don't have that information. The second thing that needs to be done is that these technologies need to be what I would call validated. And by that, I mean they need to be shown that they're relevant and reliable for a particular purpose. One of my frustrations now is that The federal agencies are not doing that. They seem to be very reactive, and they seem to want folks who are in the field to bring the data to them. And then they're going to make the decision, well, we accept this data or don't accept this data. That's a really bad situation to be in. These folks who are developing the methods are entrepreneurs, they're innovators. They have to know what kind of target they're shooting at. The third thing I would say is that we really do need to get a handle on the animal research we're doing. Again, that's an area of transparency. And we need to develop metrics so we can figure out what part of that research is actually working and what part is not working. And then, as my colleagues have suggested, I think we should be sunsetting the stuff that's not working and reinvesting that in these new methodologies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Locke. And as we move to decrease our reliance on animal experimentation, it's important to acknowledge that unfortunately there are still companies and organizations that still utilize animal testing. So what can be done to move these places toward alternative models like the ones you have mentioned?
Thank you for that question. I think there's several things that can be done. The first thing we can do, and I have some bias here as an academic, is we can train our students in these new methods. We have to move away from animal tests, and animal research is always the gold standard.
Yeah.
The second thing we can do is we can energize the whole federal grant system to make it much more friendly so that folks who want to use these alternatives can actually go out and get research money to study them.
All right, thank you. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Okay.
And that brings up a couple of really good points. Like he mentioned before, or the other guy did, that's just what they've always done. We did it on dogs before, so we're going to do it on dogs again. I think there needs to be a push for innovation. And to the guy that just spoke, what was his name? Dr. Locke. He said we need to move to education-based systems. In other words, we need to teach people there are other ways. Stop making animal testing the go-to, right? These other things sound pretty darn cool, though. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of interested in learning more about it. All right, so we're gonna jump right into our next clip, which is Representative Lauren Boebert
From
Colorado. And that's 5825 to 10340.
Thank you. I will now yield to Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate your advocacy on this and protecting so many animals against this, as we've heard, savage research that has been taking place not only in the United States, but all throughout the world. And I want to thank our witnesses today for your boldness to come out, because it seems like anytime we expose millions and billions even of dollars that are spent towards ridiculous research programs or just organizations themselves, we are lashed out at, we're called crazy and conspiracists. And I want to thank you so much for taking a bold step. I want to thank you for the White Coat Waste Project, because this is not only saving precious beagles' lives, but really exposing to the American taxpayer where their money is going.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to be good stewards of our tax money. We are responsible for those tax dollars here in Congress, and it's our responsibility to be stewards and overseers of that. So I'm grateful for DOJ to come in alongside of us to help expose some of this and kind of get those wheels turning. But just for the folks back home real quick, before I get into my questions, I want to just highlight 1 million seconds is 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years and 7 months.
Holy
shit. This is a huge difference. So when we're talking about billions of dollars going towards the cruelty of animals, it is much larger than what it sounds, because it's been so watered down to hear that Congress is spending millions or billions or even trillions of dollars. God forbid if we find out what comes after $1 trillion, we'll start spending that too.
Let's not do that.
Right.
But Mr. Goodman, since 1998, how much do you believe that the federal government has spent on animal cruelty testing?
Oh, God.
Thank you for the question. That's, as we've been discussing, it's tough because there's not a lot of transparency about actually how much tax dollars are being spent. I would say we're probably looking at $1 trillion in spending by NIH since '98, and if about 47% of that is used for experiments on animals, $500 billion could have potentially.
$500 billion.
500 billion.
Dude, that's like, and Lauren Boebert, who I've had my moments where I've disagreed and agreed with her, but she made a good point. Like, we hear about the federal spending,
Yes.
and these numbers just become so abstract after a while because we're so used to hearing they spent billions on this and billions on that. That's a ridiculous amount of money. $500 billion. Like, that's the Defense Department budget, right?
Uh-huh.
Didn't they get like $500 billion or something? Anyway,
750.
so a lot of damn money. Okay.
Actually been spent on animal testing since 1998.
That is an extreme number. Thank you for that. And Mr. Goodman, how much money do you think that NIAID wasted on unethical and useless and abusive testing? I would imagine it's about the same because none of this has been very useful or effective.
Yeah, so Dr. Fauci ran NIAID from 1984 to 2022, and when he left at the end of 2022, it had a $6.5 billion budget. Again, we don't know what percentage of that was for animal testing, but probably higher than the average across NIH. And I just want to make a note here that Dr. Fauci, and I don't have any issue with him outside of his abuse of animals, he was not just a paper pusher. He was personally involved in animal experimentation, experimenting on monkeys, giving them HIV-like viruses until the day he left NIH. He was the lead.
Uh-huh. I wish he would have to go in front of Congress.
Why? He just lies.
True.
I mean, oh, I didn't send an email. Oh, I didn't,
that is
I didn't,
true.
fund gain of function research.
Should be
Oh,
in
we did. He's a lying POS, and
He
I
should
don't
be
know
in
why
jail.
he hasn't been held accountable for it.
He should be in jail.
He absolutely should be in jail, dude. And I'm gonna say it one more time, and then I'm not gonna mention it the rest of the broadcast. If you guys don't know what he did during the AIDS epidemic,
I do.
by all means, look into it. We're not gonna get into it right now because there's enough to be pissed about in this. But the man is no hero.
He's not.
No.
lead investigator on grants that were funded by taxpayers to do that. And he started his career by infecting chimpanzees with HIV and promising we were going to have an AIDS vaccine back in the 80s, which we never got because, as you mentioned, they don't get HIV, they don't get AIDS, they don't get sick.
Yep.
So there's been an enormous amount of waste and abuse, and his legacy, unfortunately, he's gone from government, but his legacy at NIAID lives on.
Is that a Dr. Fauci
I think
chew
it
toy?
is.
That is amazing. That, if you guys, I don't know if you guys can see it.
It
Right
is.
here. Oh,
I didn't catch
wait,
that.
wait. Yeah, that is a
I did not
love it.
catch that.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, fortunately, he has gone from government, but that doesn't prevent us from holding him accountable for not only the wasteful spending, but the cruel tests that have taken place over the years.
And the
So,
crimes.
maybe you answered my next question. How many of these treatments have found cures in humans that come from this cruel kind of testing?
Virtually none. You know, we've heard the statistics today, and any that have come, it's out of pure dumb luck, and they're the exception, not the rule, because animal experiments are a dead end. It's pure chance if something good comes out of it.
And so I'm seeing here with NIAID, the budget of spending $6.5 billion in taxpayer money. It's been used to pay EcoHealth Alliance to import hundreds of Asian bats into the U.S. for new viruses in labs in Colorado run by the Wuhan-linked researchers. That's $6.7 billion for the Colorado State University in Fort Collins to research bats. Here.
Asian bats because they had to import them. So if you look, I'm just going to say it. If you guys don't think people in the government are actively plotting against the general population of the United States, I got a bridge to sell you. Like, there are definitely, look at the experiments they do on these animals. How can you not see evil in that? Like, there are evil ass people out there.
Here in America. And
Unreal.
we've also sent billions of taxpayer dollars to unaccountable labs in China and other foreign countries implant aborted baby parts into lab animals. Have you heard of that sort of research?
Yeah,
what?
we did an analysis a few years ago showing that over 90% of experiments with using human fetal tissue and putting them involved animals were funded by Fauci's NIAID.
Do you know where they're getting the?
Wait. okay, he didn't expand on it, and I'm not sure I want him to, but are they taking are they cutting out babies from people and then sticking them in animals?
That's what
it sounded like.
I'm
We're
wondering
gonna
if they're
move.
talking about organs, maybe using human hearts. I don't know.
But we're just gonna move on because
Yeah.
I can only deal with so much. But
Aborted
What
human
the
fetal tissue.
fuck?
By Fauci's NIAID,
Do you know where
putting them involved. Animals were funded by Fauci's NIAID.
they're getting the aborted human fetal tissue?
A lot of it is happening at colleges and universities that have affiliated hospitals that perform that procedure.
Madam Chair, I think we need to look into that as well. My time has expired. I apologize to our other witnesses. I did have questions for you, but I'll submit those in writing. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yep. I agree with her on that. We need to look into that because what the serious ever loving hell. So these college kids that are told abortions are wonderful and you need to go do it. It's a racket, man. The whole thing's a racket. They go, they have an abortion because they're told, that's what you need to do to send the middle finger to the patriarchy or whatever the frick, right? And then they take that tissue and those organs. You guys have already seen, if you haven't, look it up, the Planned Parenthood where they were selling parts of aborted babies, body parts from babies. Why is it such a stretch for them to put the stuff in animals? It's not. I don't even know why I'm remotely fucking surprised. At all. Tony says, I thought Boebert lost her seat.
She lost the primary and then she went into another district. He's right.
Oh,
She
so
did.
she lost her one seat and then won another one. Okay.
I
There
think
you
she
go.
lost the primary and then she went into a different seat.
And basically got caucused in, I'm guessing, and then won the general.
I believe that's what, yeah.
Okay.
She's in a very conservative district now, so she doesn't really have to worry.
Okay. All right. So, shit. Okay. So we're going to go
for bringing them
110.08 to 114.59. This is this gentleman here, Mr. Crane from, Shawn?
He's
Crane's
from Arizona.
Arizona. There you go. Here we go.
about in the Oversight Committee hearing yesterday. We also talked about in the Oversight Committee hearing yesterday some of the ridiculous programs and initiatives that need to be cut from our bloated government.
Yes.
And it seems like a lot of these studies are just another example of our senseless, out of control spending by bureaucrats who never really get held accountable. I want to start with you, Mr. Goodman. You said you have estimated over $20 billion in taxpayer money wasted on ineffective animal research. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
Mr. Goodman, did you also say that it was your estimation that $241 million was spent for transgender animal testing?
Yes, and that's, I would say, is the floor, not the ceiling, because the information on federal databases is not, it was pretty incomplete.
So you think we're going to find out that it was much more money than that for
Yes,
transgender animal testing?
yes.
So that's where it starts. That's the bare minimum that he was able to discover.
And I was wrong. She didn't. She just moved to a different district. That
Oh.
was much more conservative.
Okay, so
she didn't lose anything. She just moved.
She just moved. Okay, she didn't lose her seat. She moved and
a
ran
different
in that one
district.
to a different district. Okay. Or did they redistrict, or
No.
did she physically move?
No, I think in Colorado, as long as you're a member, I'll have to look up. But as long as you live in the state of Colorado, you can run in any district.
Okay, you can do that here as
Can
well. Yeah, but good luck. Like, oh,
I did not know that.
yeah.
I thought you had to live in the first
No,
district.
technically you don't have to live in the district,
Oh,
but like people generally don't win if you don't live in the district. But at least based on what I was able to find out. The rules may or may not be the same. By all means, not a lawyer, check the laws,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Can you describe what exactly the American people's taxpayer dollars were spent on regarding transgender animal testing?
Yeah, in a lot of these cases, they're involve mice, rats, monkeys who are being surgically mutilated and subjected to hormone therapies to mimic female to male or male to female gender transitions, gender affirming hormone therapies, and then looking at the biological, psychological, and physiological effects of the gender transitions, looking at the effects of taking vaccines after you've transitioned these animals from male to female or female to male, looking at the size of their genitals changing after you've put them on estrogen or testosterone therapies to transition them. And in the case that the chairwoman, the example the chairwoman gave, there was a $1.1 million grant to give female lab rats testosterone to mimic transgender male humans and then overdose them with this party drug to see if animals who were taking female animals taking testosterone were more likely to overdose on the sex party drug than animals who were not taking testosterone.
I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but that's exactly what if you gave me $1 million, that's exactly what I would have spent it on. What?
Yeah, who
comes up with this stuff?
Mr. Goodman,
Sickos.
are many of these taxpayer-funded animal studies shared with the public, or is there a significant oversight of this research?
You essentially needed a degree in information technology to navigate the federal spending databases to find any of this stuff.
So, so what you found is we're not
As someone who has tried to look up some stuff, yeah, it's complex.
being very transparent with what we're spending these funds on.
Not at all, and it's by design.
Oh,
Did you say that Dr. Fauci, in your estimation, had funded close to 95% of these animal research projects?
Yeah, in our analysis, Dr. Fauci funded about 95% of the
He's evil.
transgender animal experiments.
Oh, I fully
I found
believe
in
that.
found in some research that the EPA under President Trump is planning to reduce the agency's animal testing by 30% by 2025 and completely by 2035.
Oh,
Mr. Goodman, can you explain why that's a win for the American taxpayer?
I'm going to let him answer, but I didn't even know that.
And he tried,
That's awesome.
I don't know if they said that later or when this was, but he tried doing that in his first term and he was going to phase it out, but Biden brought it back when he.
Really?
I don't know if it's,
I thought I had heard something about it in his first term, but interesting. I did not
I don't
know
know if we missed it or if it's going to come later, but yeah.
that. Okay. Interesting.
Absolutely. Animal testing is incredibly time intensive, inaccurate, and expensive. And it's not very good at predicting the human health effects or environmental effects of chemicals and pesticides. And right now, what we are doing to test human effects is poisoning lab animals, forcing them to breathe wildfire smoke simulated in a laboratory by burning different types of foliage and pumping into animals' cages, making them obese to simulate what it would be like for obese people to be exposed to wildfire smoke, shooting off handguns.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. That, oh my God, the stupidity.
And rifles and forcing animals to breathe the emissions and gun control experiments, and the list goes on. And that's what's happening currently at the EPA after the Biden administration overturned the Trump plan to phase out animal testing.
That's what I was.
Mr. Goodman, one more question. You've also been outspoken about the COVID-19 outbreak stemming from Dr. Fauci's U.S.-funded research at China's Wuhan lab. What are the public health risks if we continue some of these outrageous animal studies?
We're flirting with disaster if we continue to fund dangerous virus research, both abroad, like in Colorado, where Fauci greenlit this bat lab. They're trying to import hundreds of bats from Asia to build a new lab in Colorado to do virus experiments with Ebola, Nipah, Lassa, deadly viruses for which there's no cure. It's just a matter of time before we have another pandemic on our hands if we let mad scientists run amok with our money.
It's almost like they want another pandemic.
That's what I was about to say. Dude, I promise there are people out there who would gladly, and they'll even admit it, they'll admit it on social media, they would gladly trade millions of American lives in order to make Trump look bad. I've seen people say it.
No, I believe
Like,
you.
yeah, it's
but I'm just
crazy
thinking
that
in my
that's a
head
thing.
that
But yeah, that's
people
how.
that don't even care about humanity or kindness or anything.
not even a little. I think they're demons. I think that they're either started off that way or have opened themselves up
Yeah.
to demonic possession because they're because there's no way that I could look at myself in the mirror after even like thinking about doing one of these on a poor defenseless little bruh. Okay. We're going to go into Representative Burleson from
Missouri.
You see, I knew it was an M state. I'm getting there.
And we've seen him before.
Thank you. I yield back.
All right, I will now yield 5 minutes to Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this hearing. I have to admit, whenever I saw the subject line of this, I was surprised that this was a thing.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I think the American people should be even more shocked to find and disgusted to find out what's happening with their dollars. I think it's actually embarrassing. I can't imagine people from other countries look at this country as a beacon and as an example. And here we are spending money, taxpayer dollars, to try to study transgender transing animals and testing them on party drugs.
That's insane.
I mean, it's insane. My question to you, Mr. Goodman, is I understand that your organization, White Coat Waste, helped expose the taxpayer-funded experiments on bats that led to the COVID pandemic. So can you walk us through how did you come about that? What was your investigation? How did you come up
That's a good
get
question.
the information?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Again, it's an honor to be here. In 2018, we uncovered a lab at the USDA here right outside of the Beltway where they were breeding hundreds of kittens every year and then flying to China and other foreign countries to these disgusting wet markets and buying dog and cat meat. They were then putting it in their federal employees. They were then putting it in their carry-on luggage, flying it back to the United States, and then force-feeding dog and cat meat to kittens in this government laboratory
And it gets
in
worse.
Maryland. They had spent $22 million on this project.
For what purpose?
They wanted to know if people eating dog and cat meat in China might be exposed to a particular parasite that could be carried in dog and cat meat.
Yeah.
How in the I'm speechless because parasites work differently in humans. Look at the stuff dogs eat, dude. Like seriously, you can feed a dog a raw steak, no problem at all. They love that shit. You eat a raw steak, you're probably gonna have, some issues, right? These are supposed to be scientists, man. This is why this right here is a perfect example of why you cannot censor people. People all over need to be able to talk because it's very simple to go, that is a dumb idea. Here's why. But they're in this little bubble where nobody's allowed to question. Nobody's allowed to go, hey, why would this be a thing? They just do what they're told. Little worker drones.
Wow. So that was when we first got a sense that taxpayer dollars.
That was the first clue.
Yeah.
And you continue to follow that.
Unfortunately, the Trump administration shut that project down. They adopted out the cats who were left in the lab. Two of them went to live with my boss, the president and founder of White Coat Waste Project, Delilah and Petit. Lived happily ever after with him. But that set us on the scent of foreign aid for animal research. In late 2019, we discovered a list on the NIH website of all the labs in China receiving taxpayer dollars. And in January of 2020,
There's like still 26?
Yeah.
Or how many were there at that?
There were more than 30 at the time, and there were actually labs in Russia receiving taxpayer money at the time. In January of 2020,
That's why I say we're sending money all over the world, and none of us know where.
we met with the White House to flag for them that these labs in China, including the Wuhan lab, were receiving taxpayer funding. And then in April 2020, we finally went public, working with Congressman Matt Gaetz and Joni Ernst. We went public, exposing the grant that Fauci sent to the Wuhan lab through EcoHealth Alliance to fund the gain-of-function experiments. And then since then, we've been working to...
And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the media called it a conspiracy theory. Facebook, Twitter, all the other Instagram, all the social media banned people who said a word about that, calling it against community guidelines, right? Community
standard.
Yeah.
Defund EcoHealth, defund the Wuhan lab, and cut funding for all animal laboratories in adversarial nations as a matter of animal welfare, government waste, and national security.
What kind of sick and twisted individual comes up with a plan to have an experiment where you're going to, feed turn these animals into cannibals?
You can't even articulate it. It's that stupid.
Where does that come from?
Right.
What was the thought process? How did the PhD student who's doing the research, how did they make that pitch to get that grant?
Right.
If it tells you anything about the government's thinking, the person responsible for this experiment is in the USDA's Hall of Fame.
He named the name.
Think about that for a moment. Like, just really let that sink in.
Responsible for
that grant.
If it tells you anything about the government's thinking, the person responsible for this experiment is in the USDA's Hall of Fame.
That tells you everything you need to know, which is exactly why I am so thrilled about Trump's second term and Doge. Clean all this shit out. All of it. Got it.
The name?
Dr. Doobie.
Dr. Doobie. Wow. Let me ask this question. I just have a little bit more time left. Given the fact that we have got quantum computing, we have now AI, isn't there opportunities where we can, if they truly are trying to do research and determine something, couldn't they run some of these, a lot of this research through, advanced technology using quantum computers, data centers?
Absolutely. And there's studies that have come out of Johns Hopkins and elsewhere showing that things like screening drugs and chemicals for human safety are actually much more accurate and efficient using computer modeling and AI than testing on lab maps.
On a completely different species.
Correct.
Right? With completely different DNA.
Yeah, go figure.
It would make sense.
Yeah, imagine that.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do. Thank you for exposing all of this. It's shameful that we're still sending money to these, but I will do everything we can to try to stop this.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God, dude. Like, what? This is the problem, and it all needs to be torn down. We're going to go right back into Representative Brown, 1956 to 123:38, and then we have two more clips after that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burleson. With agreement from the ranking member, the chair and ranking member will each get an additional 5 minutes to ask questions. So I'm going to yield to the ranking member first.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I want to circle back to you, Ms. Baker, with regards to potential legislative solutions that Congress can do to support and increase oversight of animal experimentation.
I was just wondering if anybody out there misses Circle Back Girl, Jen Psaki.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for this question. One of the things that was mentioned is the numbers of animals. It is unbelievable that in 2025 in the United States, we still don't know how many animals are used in research. The estimate is, up to 100 million, but we need to know that number. And
that's a lot of animals, dude.
That is.
One of the reasons we don't know that number is that a lot of the animals that are used in research are not even recognized as animals under the law. mice, rats, birds bred for research, invertebrates, they are not animals under the law. And so they are not counted. We can amend the Animal Welfare Act to count those animals by including them in the definition of animals.
So this points to a larger problem, right? Because of the legalese that everything our country does, right, as far as the branches of government, it all is couched in legalese. So in order to qualify as an animal under the law, it has to be certain things. And these animals, mice, lab rats, things like that, are not qualified as animals. So they're outside the protection of the law. What happens when they start changing the definition of human? What happens when they start assigning rights to people based upon certain definitions? We've already seen that with these so-called hate speech laws and other things that affect only a certain subset of society. Dangerous ground.
If there are, if there's no appetite for amending the Animal Welfare Act, there are other solutions, and especially focused on federal government spending. So the NIH does require recipients of NIH funding to do some reporting, but it's not transparent and it's not accurate. Every 4 years, if you receive NIH grants, every 4 years, you need to provide some assurances that you are complying with NIH policies. And
every 4 years. So they give you a big old check to go and do this research with and check in with you after the next president's term. What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the hell, dude?
They need to change that.
We're just handing money out and going, hey, see you in a few years. Let me know how it comes out. What?
And in that is an average daily inventory of animals. It's just an estimate. It's not transparent. To get that information, you would have to do FOIA requests. And so there is actually some proposed legislation, the Federal Animal Research Accountability Act, that would that could change this. Simply put, if you receive NIH grants, then once a year, you need to report on how many animals you have used, how many have been housed, bred, used in research, and that should be made transparent.
At minimum.
Thank you for that.
Like at minimum, that should be
I
the
appreciate
reported
you
information.
giving your testimony today. And I think it's Mr. Goodman. I do have a question with regards. We keep hearing about the care, and I think that the gender affirming care, and I do find that concerning. Just for clarification purposes, can you let me know what is that dollar figure and where is the source from?
For those experiments,
Yes.
that's the source of that is NIH reporter website and the usaspending.gov website.
Okay, and what was the dollar figure?
Let me get it for you. And I have a spreadsheet with all of those projects.
Okay.
I'd be happy to share it. The dollar figure was $240 million in recent grants. $26 million of those are active grants.
Okay, and the
And those-
241 million is for?
So that's grants that are available in the NIH reporter database that I think we used. And again, I have this actual search saved. If you use search terms transgender and animal models, those were the hits that came up.
Okay, because I think the article that you cited in your statement indicated there was $10 million.
Yeah, that
I was
was
just trying to get
it.
clarity.
Yeah, that original article, that was just a subsection of a sub-selection of the projects. It wasn't everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, that was just a tiny piece of the $250 million spent on transitioning lab animals. What?
Nuts.
It is absolutely insane, man. There's no way this is real life. Like, this has to be those who subscribe to the simulation theory, whoever my player is, bro, we need to respec. I'm just saying, because no way, man. No way. All right. So we're going to jump right into Representative Mace, and we got a couple more minutes of her. 123.39. So right after this to 126.13. Here we go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, and I will yield back.
Thank you, and I'm going to yield to myself for 5 minutes, and Congresswoman Boebert, I'm going to yield to you for a minute or two if you have, I think you had a couple extra questions you want to ask. My first question.
Before I get started, though, I do want to say this. This is far more congenial than most of these we watch.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I got to give even Brown, who was very Democrat,
Uh-huh.
wasn't getting buck wild about the transgender stuff.
Nope.
Wasn't get like,
This is completely nonpartisan.
I appreciate this, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, good job to everyone involved in this.
Mr. Goodman, what is the worst animal testing experiment you've ever heard of?
Oh, God.
And uncovered?
Just wait.
There's some really bad ones out there. What is the absolute
Oh,
worst one
God.
you've ever heard of and uncovered?
The kitten cannibalism was pretty horrendous. Breeding kittens just to force them to eat cat meat and then killing them even though they were perfectly healthy after they collected their feces out of a litter box. I mean, that's literally what was happening. They were doing that to thousands and thousands of kittens. The DOJ until recently was stabbing, shooting, and blowing up live animals for training exercises. We were able to cut that and defund that. The experiments that the NIH funded and Fauci funded in Tunisia, where they were putting the dogs and heads in mesh cages and filling them with biting flies. There's a lot of nightmare stuff that we're being forced to fund, and taxpayers don't like it, and they don't
Nope,
even know
they
how
don't.
bad the situation is. If they did, they would be, marching in the streets.
Yeah, and Dr. Locke, a question for you. What are the prospects of a drug therapy that fails animal testing? Is it likely to receive regulatory approval?
Thank you for your question. I'm not an expert on the drug development process, but the way you've described things, I think if the drug would not make it through the tests that are required, it would not be able to be in the market. If I could just add, though, that Congress has really looked closely at this issue about developing drugs and has passed a law, the FDA Modernization Act, that removed the requirements for testing drugs. And my understanding is that there's bipartisan support for another law because Congress feels that the FDA is not moving more quickly in this area. That is the FDA Modernization Act 3.0 that would force the agency to really pay a lot more attention to using alternatives.
Okay,
He had to have misspoke because what he said was it removed the requirements for testing.
Oh, yeah,
I think he means for animal testing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping
I think
because
that's what he means.
on the other hand, it's not like we haven't been given untested medications before.
and then Ms. Baker, before I hand it over to Ms. Boebert, I love your idea of revisiting the Animal Welfare Act. I'd be open to working with you and finding that language and doing a bill that would insert that language to define what an animal is. I think it's very important. I'm all about small parts, big difference. Of course, I would like to eradicate animal testing altogether, but that seems like an easy win that we could work on together in a nonpartisan manner. So I would love to talk to you about that, and I will yield the last 2.5 minutes to Ms. Boebert.
Okay. And
The final clip.
yeah, this is the final clip. We're going to end with Representative Boebert, and it is about 2 minutes, a little over. Here we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the NIH probably should change their acronym to FOD, Faces of Death.
Yeah.
This very much sounds like a show that my mother would not let me watch as a child. And, just hearing how
I don't even know what
egregious
she's
this
talking
is.
about.
You never heard of Faces of Death?
Uh-uh.
Okay. So really quick.
Okay.
It was a underground videotape that existed in the 90s, right? And it was a TV show that purported to show real deaths in various circumstances, right? Like, this guy got killed, the weirdest deaths, right? This guy got killed when the car fell on him, and then, purported to show the reality of it. I was able to score one and didn't tell my mom. It wasn't nearly as bad as everybody made it out to be. I was legitimately disappointed. I'm a teenager, like, woohoo! And it was just like, I've seen worse on HBO, dude. Like,
There's many more things that I have listed here. Of course, we've heard of the beagles who were in the mesh cages. I don't know if their vocal cords were paralyzed or if they were removed, but they were prevented from barking, correct?
Yeah, there was a project that Dr. Fauci funded. Actually, we worked with Chairwoman Mace to expose that they were doing drug testing where they were poisoning puppies with massive doses of drugs, and the laboratory cut there was actually a line item in the contract for a cordectomy.
Wow.
To cut the vocal cords so the dogs would not bark in the lab.
Terrible.
I would hate for your, sick research to be interrupted by an uncomfortable dog.
Wow. And so we've heard that.
Oh
We've
my
heard
God.
of electroshock therapy, even to the point where cats had their spinal cords exposed, their back sliced open, and that electroshock therapy was given to test for erectile dysfunction
What?
and cognitive
Yeah.
issues.
What the fuck, dude? They cut.
And so many other things. And so I ended my last round of questioning talking about the implantation of aborted fetal tissues. And you said that universities partner with clinics who are performing these abortions. Now, how does that process work and who funds that? Are the mothers of these aborted babies giving permission? Do they know it's taking place? Is there taxpayer funding in the crosshairs of that other than the actual testing itself?
That's outside of my wheelhouse.
Okay, that again, Madam Chair, I think this is something we should look into. I would love to see just what permissions are granted and given for that. I know that we have some regulatory framework within the Department of Health and Human Services and the Public Health Service Act, and regulations include prohibitions on buying or selling the tissue of valuable consideration, but also but they allow for compensation for costs associated with the tissue handling. And so I would love to look into that. So not only can we prevent the cruelty in the animals like these beautiful beagles we see here today, but also even our children who are being harmed in this process as well, for whatever reason it may be. But Madam Chair, I would love to continue to work with you on this and hold Dr. Fauci, the NIH, NIAID, and everyone else accountable for this wasteful spending, and I yield.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is what has been going on under the watch of our federal government, our so-called National Institute of Health for Health, I don't know, whatever, NIH. I am speechless when it comes to this, man. Like, there's evil in the world, but in general, you're not really subjected to it. And this is just one evil thing after another.
And who does that?
Who the fuck comes up with this stuff? Exposing.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't even know if I can make it through saying it. Exposing the spinal cord of a cat and hooking it up to electrodes to test ED or to something with in humans. What? I think whoever greenlit this shit should have it done to them. I think that, the punishment, I'm always a big fan of the punishment should fit the crime, right? I think if you're going to do that to a poor, defenseless, helpless cat, dude, I love cats.
Oh, yeah,
anybody who knows me knows I got a thing for cats, especially little black cats. They're my, Achilles heel. They're my weakness. Bruh. Usually I like to end the stream on a high note, a joke, a song. I got nothing.
No.
After this, I got nothing. I hope you guys have a nice, hope you guys have a better evening. Go watch Palette Cleanser. Find, what's the animation studio? Not Disney. What's the other way? Is it DreamWorks or Pixar? No, Pixar is owned by Disney, right? The one that's not. I don't remember which one it is, but there's another animation studio out there. Go watch one of their movies. I got to admit, I watched Aladdin yesterday. Older Disney movies, man, you know, because my son still hadn't seen Aladdin. He did when he was a little kid, but not since then. He doesn't remember it, but he liked it. Aladdin was awesome, dude. And the genie, like the Robin Williams, man. Robin Williams. That's who I miss. I miss Robin Williams, dude. Speaking of deaths, though, did you guys see Gene Hackman passed away? Him, his wife, and his dog. Now, initially, they said no foul play suspected. But what they recently said, right before we got online, I saw that they said there's enough justification for an investigation. Oh, really? See, I didn't know that. I didn't read that part, but it doesn't surprise me. People had called to do a wellness check. The neighbor had called to do a wellness check. So it makes sense that he was not out for a while, or not alive for a while, whatever you want to call it. All right, guys. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a better evening, and we'll see you again real soon. Woo, this was a rough one. This was a rough one. All right. God bless you. God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Have a great night.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Shawn Holmgren and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.